La plus grande de nos richesses ne se mesure pas en millions. Nous vous faisons découvrir des ovnis pour vous permettre d'en devenir un, vous aussi. Sportifs, entrepreneurs, artistes, ils nous partagent chaque semaine leurs récits de véritables trésors d'informations.
Welcome back on the OVNI podcast. Today, we're going to interview June Angelides, who grew up in Lagos, moved to London at age 17, built Mums in Tech to help mothers break into tech, and now invest with Samos VC, a fund backing companies across deep tech, AI, consumer internet, e-commerce, B2B software, and fintech. We're going to talk about the usual and unusual founder journey from founder to VC, and also how June evaluates risks, what she's learned at Samos, about conviction in uncertain markets, and the personal lens she brings to investing, shaped by identity, motherhood, her mission to open doors for those historically overlooked in tech. Welcome to this podcast.
Thank you for having me, Marie.
Thank you so much for being here. So I wanted to jump straight in and talk a little bit about your sort of origin story. You moved to Lagos, from Lagos when you were 17 years old. Can you tell me a bit about how that happened?
Absolutely. So I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family in Lagos. And, quite frankly, it's one of those things I started to observe as I got older. My mom's siblings half had gone to the UK and half had gone to the US. And I guess I kind of wanted to be like my mom. She'd come, to London as a teenager quite early. I think she came at 15. And I think there was a part of me that wanted to understand the other side of, my culture. My mom is half Scottish, half Nigerian. I have family here. My dad lived in the UK. So I was very curious, and it felt like a natural next place for me to go and kind of learn and explore. And again, even at that point, I thought perhaps start a career.
Love it. But you weren't directly an investor. So what happened between the moment you arrived and just all the build up to you being an investor at Samos?
Absolutely. So I came here to do my A-levels, and then I went to UCL, studied economics. I knew I didn't want to get into investment banking or consulting, which is where all my colleagues were going from UCL. And I sort of landed at Thomson Reuters, mainly because of the community. A friend of mine had started working there, and she said it was a great place. The culture was amazing, and I loved media. So I really was thinking about how I was going to inch towards the fashion floor, potentially.
I can tell today you look great.
Mean, that was the dream, red carpet. But I worked on the syndicated news team, and I really enjoyed just that buzz of the news floor, being around reporters, and there's just so much energy, as the stories are coming in, the speed with which stories are written. And I guess for me, that was my real foray into, this world of tech and entrepreneurship, just kind of seeing all the activity. And then a recruiter reached out to me and asked if I was going to be interested in joining this American bank that was coming to the UK. And they were looking for happy people. And I said, okay.
Sign me up.
That is new, but I am intrigued. And I went along, and honestly, just that very first interaction with the team was so special. I remember walking in, I don't eat chocolate. This is weird, but I was offered chocolate, but the enthusiasm with which I was offered the chocolate, I was like, okay, awesome.
Is that how easy it is to convince you?
It really is. Enthusiasm.
Okay, if any founders are listening right now, they know how to pitch June.
Be enthusiastic.
Actually, it was my bank when we were running the company in the UK, Silicon Valley Bank. And yeah, I definitely think there was a unique atmosphere there.
It was a very special vision they had when I joined. This was pre-banking license. And I just remember them telling me their plans to be at the heart of the innovation ecosystem. And I thought, wow, what an opportunity, first of all, to be part of a bank being built and being able to shape this ecosystem. And, I fell in love with entrepreneurship, with the founder journey, being able to support founders at different stages. And I think that was when I knew, okay, this is my place. This is kind of where I'm meant to be. So my second maternity leave, I decided to have a go at building myself.
Love it.
And I think that was when I recognized how important it was going to be to know a little bit about coding. It was just going on the national curriculum. And I thought, we're dealing with so many really technical founders. It would be good to speak their language, ask the hard questions, because again, we were leaning towards the financials, the softer side. And I thought, well, I want to know like how it's really being built. So I signed up to Code Academy, did a couple courses, and it was on that journey that I thought, well, why isn't there a class I could go to? I had a 2-month-old and a 2.5-year-old. And I thought, well, I can't leave my 2-month-old at home, but there is no class I can go to a General Assembly, for example, with her. So I decided to create a pop-up, a coding school where mums could come with their babies and have childcare on site. And I remember writing to Silicon Valley Bank because I had no money. I mean, I was on maternity leave and I asked them for funding. And that was the very first time I'd had to ask for money. And I put a presentation together and I asked them if they would sponsor childcare and like just kind of the setup costs to run this pilot. I had full intentions to go back after my mat leave, but I had a year where I thought I could do something really interesting.
So they said yes straight away?
They said yes. I was blown away just by the support because, it had never been done.
Well, I love that you're telling that story because I think we hear a lot of horror stories about, what's happening during maternity leave. That's
I know.
Also the good side of it.
Nobody would think to ask their employer, to fund their entrepreneurship venture.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly, I don't think I've told that story before. And that really blew me away. And I think that sense of, first of all, trust, but also the permission to go and explore was like really powerful. So that really motivated me. So I really felt like I need to give this a real go. Gave myself 4 months, came up with a curriculum, found volunteers to teach this program, and then I put out a type form. And I think within 2 weeks, I had 100 people come back and say that they were interested in learning to code. So I designed it in a way that people could have their ideas. And with, over 8 weeks, they would learn how you go from an idea to a product.
And how was it? Was it specifically for women who were on maternity leave with young children?
That was initially who I thought was going to be interested. But we had people who were stay-at-home moms, who were working part-time. I had founders who perhaps were not very technical, but wanted to come along and learn how to communicate better with their engineers so that they could sort of bridge that language divide. Because sometimes it's tricky. You don't know how to, put a brief together. Back then, I think that was my challenge, not being able to communicate the idea for the product I had in a way that would make sense to someone who was building, understanding timeframes. What is a sprint? Agile, even understanding the tools that were available back then, like Slack and, being able to mock up an MVP. Not many people knew a lot of those hacks. And I wanted to put us in an environment where, first of all, they're surrounded with incredible engineers, people in UX, Agile, product. And that was super special and it had never been done.
And you did all this with 2 young kids at home. That sounds like the most productive maternity leave.
It was my 6.
Puts me to shame. Well done.
It was a lot, but I am so proud of myself for pushing myself out of my comfort zone. Because again, I remind people that prior to this, I was very, very shy. I know people don't believe it, but I remember being
Shocking news.
Meetings, breaking news. I would be in meetings at SPV and I remember thinking, oh, I've got an idea, but I would never put my hand up. Because I never thought that like my idea was valid or...
Is that being shy or is that never having received the approval that,
I think maybe no one said, speak up. And I'm very intentional about that now, about making space so that others can share their ideas. Because I remember being that person in the room where space was not created for me to give my opinion. And I had opinions, but I just wasn't sure that anyone wanted to hear them. So I was very intentional going forward to make sure people knew that every idea counts.
Yeah, I think that's actually fascinating and must really help you today in your role as an investor.
It does. And I think, that process of running Mums, and ended up doing it for 3 years, at the end of the mat leave, I had so many people coming to me and saying, carry on, please, we need this. So I ran 12 cohorts, taught just over 250 women to code in that time. But during that time, constantly what came up, especially amongst the entrepreneurs, was lack of access to funding and also lack of representation on the venture capital side. And I kept thinking to myself, well, I need to go on the other side of the table because we also struggled to raise funding, couldn't break into the angel community. It was very unstructured back then. I think there was only 1 or 2 groups.
When was that? 2018?
This was, about 2017. And the reality was when we did approach that particular group, I won't name them, they said I needed to have a co-founder. So as a solo founder, I was instantly ruled out. So didn't know where to go to find these people, wasn't suitable for VC.
Yes.
Impact funding was very nascent. So there really wasn't any, couldn't go to Better Society or, or Big Society. So the options were limited. So I said, I need to go on the other side of the table. And I was introduced to the team at Samos, and I instantly fell in love with their thesis, being sector-agnostic, having the chance to work with companies from very early on to early Series A onwards. And the fact that we're patient capital, very special and very rare. There are not many family offices that work in a direct capacity. Many tend to be fund to fund. So I thought, wow, what an amazing opportunity to get. And I've been with them for 7 years.
And you're also an angel investor.
I'm an angel investor.
So when did you start that? Because you're talking about going on the other side of the table. I think it's absolutely crucial. One other thing I think that we heard this morning at Unlock VC, because we're here in Paris and we heard amazing women talk about VC this morning, is that in the US, you've got about 60% of all the VCs who've had some kind of operational experience. In Europe, it's only 12.5%. Wow. Right. So going on the other side of the table, as you're describing, because you were at Silicon Valley Bank, right? So although you were interfacing with startups, actually, you didn't know what it was like. And then you became a founder. And then you added this other, thing on your massive CV already, which is investing with your own money, skin in the game. So tell me about how that happened.
Yeah, for the longest time, I'd meet founders, which I would personally love, and it might not be a fit for us at Samos. And I would often say, I kind of wish I could get involved. I think what was initially my barrier was the check size. I had this misconception that I needed to put in 100K for it to be a meaningful check. And I think that myth finally got busted probably around 2019 when I started spending more time with communities like Alma, started speaking to smaller, angel investors like Andy Davis, Andy Yim, who kind of broke down how they were approaching investing. And I started hearing about syndicates. And I had never really been aware of that dynamic because, again, I'd been exposed to angels, but many angels who were able to write these big tickets. And I felt like, well, I'm not yet in that category.
Can you tell us,
I can't start.
People listening, can you tell us about syndicates and how that works?
Absolutely. So I think it's become a bit more mainstream, but I think back then there wasn't too much information around. There was AngelList, but I felt like it was this kind of secret that only a couple people knew about.
Absolutely. And also SPV, special purpose vehicle. Yeah. Who knows what that means?
Exactly.
It sounds like SUV. I have no clue.
It literally feels something super complicated that you need a lawyer. But now I think with platforms like Odin, and full disclosure, I'm an angel investor in Odin, but I actually made my first angel investment thanks to Odin.
That's so cool.
And ultimately what they've done is they've made it super easy, similar to AngelList, for individuals to put in smaller tickets with a group of people, a syndicate. And essentially that's what it is. So say there's 10 of you, you can club together, and help a company get to 10K. All of you put 1K in, very easy, and it's a meaningful ticket for that founder, but it comes as one line on the cap table. So it's not, they're not having to do a ton of paperwork. Odin or AngelList takes away all of that admin. You're not burdened with a ton of legal costs.
Yeah.
The fees are minimal. It's split between the group. It just makes your life so much easier. It's really democratized, access to, great investors for the founders.
Absolutely.
Founders that, investors that they probably may not have been able to access previously, but are interested in putting capital to work and have an operator background, which is very relevant to that company. Suddenly you're finding them part of this ecosystem. And once you do one, the next one becomes a lot easier. And I think that's what happened for me, where probably within 3 months of doing Bloom Money, I was in by rotation and writing a bigger check because, again, you get a bit more comfortable. I think it's a muscle. But I think, with any of these things, you have to be willing to accept that there is a big risk.
Of course.
When I write that check, it's like, okay, I've parked it. It may or may not come back to me. And I have to be okay with that.
Totally.
It would be amazing if I made tons of money. We're talking about living in a fancy lifestyle. That'd be nice one day.
We're talking about Cardi B earlier.
I mean, we all want to be baddies.
For sure.
But at the end of the day, I think what really stood out to me was being able to be a part of that key moment in that founder journey, right at the early, when you need someone to believe in you, those early days where every penny matters. If it means that it adds momentum to your round, it means that the next institutional check can come in because there's like conviction from early angels. I'm always happy to do a reference check with institutional investors where I've done a small angel round in a company. And I think these are things that the founders are like very grateful for ultimately.
Totally. And I want to double click on what you just said because it's so important. I think for me, so I'm an angel investor as well, and I started 5 years ago, but I already had, an acquisition basically of my company. So I had a liquidity event, right? But I never would have imagined that I could have been an angel investor before because I imagine, just like you, that you need to have large amounts of money to even have permission or give yourself permission to enter that game, which is so interesting because we self-select out of the process.
100%. Nobody had said I couldn't invest all those years. I could have said, here's my 500. Do you want it?
Yeah.
And actually that comes with this, and this. I can help you with your fundraising. I can help you with strategy.
Yeah.
Like we sometimes don't give ourselves enough credit as to what we bring to the table. And I think this is something that I'm really like trying to get people to, back to kind of what we were saying, shout about what you can do. Shout about your skills. Let people know that you are valuable. Talk about what you've done. We don't do that enough. We're too polite. We're too shy. We're too conservative.
We're too shy, but it depends at which stage of your career. Like I'll give you another example because you're describing moments in your career where you already had skills that you could literally trade and made you feel good to think that you could invest a small check, but maybe bring a lot of value. What if you're even younger than that and actually you don't even think that's for you? And my friend Fadia, who's going to be listening to this, knows that she sent me an opportunity to invest in this very famous fintech startup, I think like 12 years ago. And I didn't ghost her, but I just didn't even answer to the point. I just said, okay, well, that's great. Let's go hang out, have a drink. But really what I thought is, I don't have money. But you could invest like 2K. You can invest 1K in some like startups because, as you said, like there's syndicates. There's also crowdfunding. There's a number of different instruments where you're not actually going to interface with the founders in that scenario, but you can still participate and learn about the process. And for me, what really helped me personally was I was born and raised in France, and we're lucky to have a brilliant education system where we don't have to pay for university as much as it happens in the US or in the UK. But then somebody in America told me, look, you have to pay for your education. So, it's just, yes, you might lose 1K that you put, and maybe it took you a long time to save that money. I would know for sure because I didn't earn a lot of money before I sold the company. And ultimately, it's still, you're getting something out of it, to your point.
I agree. That education piece is so critical because, again, like if you're smart, and I encourage everyone who considers angel investing, ask for the information rights. I don't think that it's something that should just be going to the lead investor. That's something I always ask for and I always get. Yeah. I think it's because I say at the end of the day, how can I help you if I don't know what's going on?
Absolutely.
So I ask, and when I get them, I'm learning about the different business models. I'm learning, okay, well, what are the challenges? And also I'm able to share, knowledge from other investments I've made within the fund and help these companies as because I've seen, scenarios which they may not have. So I think everyone has something that they bring to the table. Super, super important to own it and just keep talking about it.
And actually, what kind of investor are you today at Samos? Because at the beginning, you might have been a certain style when you were an angel investor. Do you feel like you're the same persona, I guess, as an angel and as an investor for Samos? Or are you more hands-off?
That is so interesting. I think because I come with that founder lens, definitely super empathetic as an investor, angel, and for Samos. I think I try and approach it very much the same. I always say to founders, I am here to work for you. This is not just a capital exchange. I am at your disposal.
I love that.
They all have my WhatsApp and I encourage them to use it. I'm like, do not be shy. reach out to me, and they do, whether it's co-founder conflict, whether it's, late at night, they're stressed, they're feeling burnt out, they need access to a coach. I'm like, any of those things, or it's a strategy session, can we do, brainstorming? I will always create time. I think that's why people don't believe that I work with Samos 2 days a week. They're like, are you sure? I'm pretty sure I saw you working every day.
24/7, for sure.
Again, this is a job that it's of service. We are of service to the founders. I can't imagine it working any other way. It's a privilege to be on their cap tables.
I mean, I absolutely love you saying that. I think a lot of people see it differently. With this is why we need to have, more founders who then turn to investment, because as you said, you bring empathy, but also what you're describing is also called servant leadership.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's just
important.
not that common, actually, but you are at the service of other people. I consider that it was my role as well as an angel investor. Although sometimes, to be completely honest, you can't always, I would love to have had someone like you, but it's not always possible, because if you are, scaling how many investments you make, obviously you have to make trade-offs. So at the end of the day, you can only be 100% with a few founders, but it's still brilliant to get 100% of someone instead of just getting the scraps.
And it ebbs and flows,
Yes.
as companies mature, thankfully they don't all need me at the same time. But I think ultimately the reason we invest in any founders because we have a high degree of faith in the fact that they know what they're doing. They know how to hire. They get on with it. But also they know when to ask for help. And I think those are the founders that impress me the most.
Yeah.
Those that have that humility and knowing where the gaps in knowledge are, who they need to bring on board. I love super ambitious, I love when they come with a list. They're like, these are the people we want, and we're watching, we're waiting for them to become available. We started making our pitch. I'm like, yes, I love that, because it's all about the team.
Yeah. And I think it's very important that you're sharing with us some really practical tips about, what founders should be doing. And also, I'm curious to understand, what are the last few investments you've made, just talking about through the Samos lens? What are you looking at right now?
Yeah, the last one I'm super excited about. We invest in a company called Level Health, which is a continuous hormone monitoring company. And I think health tech over the last couple of years has been a sector that I've really, from a personal level, as someone who has type 2 diabetes, I'm very hyper aware of how important it is that we know what's going on in our bodies. I think this is the beauty of tech. We've got Neko Health and we've got things like Zoe and being able to monitor our blood sugar. But I think, as women, we want to understand our hormones. Many of us will soon be approaching that perimenopause, and whether we like it or not, it impacts the way we live and work, and we need to factor in, are we going to have a hot flush in the middle of a meeting? How do we navigate conversations with our colleagues to kind of educate them on what we're going through? And I don't think it should be hidden. I think it's much like maternity or every woman will go through menopause. It's happening more and more. And
Absolutely.
I think we need to understand what's going on. We need to build solutions that make it possible for us to not only live longer, but work better. So I'm really excited about the space. We invested in Hester Health, which is, better care for women postpartum. I think that is really powerful.
I wish I had known about that one.
Healthcare is complicated. It's broken. It's one of those sectors that has been underfunded for so long. We're now starting to see a little bit of a rise and, more attention being paid to it. And with, advent of AI, I think we're seeing more productivity gains. So that's a space I'm watching really closely, and I'm really, really excited about, those two new investments, and both female founded.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Even better.
And what's your geographical lens? Do you invest just in the UK? What are the types of check sizes you invest in the companies?
So through Samos, we're investing in the UK, Europe, US, and we can invest up to $1.5 million. Being single LP, it's very much patient capital. And we often say, sector-wise, we're super agnostic, but you can always twist our arms, and we can also go a little bit later. So we invested in a quantum computing company, which was a little bit out of our usual remit. But if we're excited enough, we can flex our thesis. And then separately, I run a small syndicate investing in African startups, which I'm really excited about. I mean, growing up in Lagos, every time I've gone back, just seeing the amount of hustle culture, innovation, I just think that there is so much that, thanks to tech, we can like literally leapfrog so much, overused term, but it's true. It
True.
allows us to take advantage of, just so much momentum that is being made, sort of in the West.
Tell me about that vehicle, which I think you started in 2022, and you invest in Kenya, Ghana, South Africa, Nigeria as well.
Yeah,
So
Lavarie.
Lavarie. So tell us about how did you go about picking your first startups to back?
Yeah. And I think this is where the humility really comes in. I'm not on the ground. I am by no means an expert on African startup investing, and I have to own that. So I definitely relied on the ecosystem. I was very fortunate to go on a trip to Lagos with the Google team in 2019. Cool. And that was really pivotal in sort of allowing me to build out my ecosystem of VC investors on the ground, startups through the program. So I really kept in touch over the years, and I started watching them and building a case internally as to why it was time that we started paying attention. And I would like to sort of spearhead that conversation. So I set up Lavarie, and the thesis was really focusing on e-commerce, fintech, health tech, future of work, and B2B SaaS. These were the sectors where I just felt like a lot was really happening. And then obviously I know Nigeria, but also, just thinking about which are the most stable economies. So Kenya, Ghana, South Africa.
Yeah. Tell us about the considerations actually that are unique, because you talked about fintech. I backed a fintech startup as well, actually, in Nigeria. There's, as you said, some specific maybe things to look out for, stability.
100%. Yeah. The reality is in Nigeria for the longest time, currency has just been constantly devaluing, and we had this dual exchange rate system. There was one for the banks and there was one for the black market. So these are things that impact the way businesses are run. It's just a much tougher ecosystem. We have power cuts, we have bad roads. So when you're thinking about how your companies are going to, first of all, get set up, the costs they're going to have to incur way more than any startup would have to deal with, in the US and Europe. So you have to factor all of that in when you're thinking about what to invest in. Fintech is a lot more established. We've had some really good wins come out of continent, like Flutterwave. We've also, Paystack was another big win for the ecosystem, sold to Stripe. And we were very lucky to have access to a company called Rayness very early on. I was introduced to the founders by a founder who I had met at the Google Accelerator back in 2019. And we were able to write one of the first checks in. So we came in very early. This company has done phenomenally well. Massive expansion. No, it's so nice to see them win. I think Chaodec is another one in Nigeria. It's the deliverer for Africa. And the founder I met through a guy I bumped into in San Francisco. You never know.
So random.
Met a Nigerian in Stanford. And he introduced me to Femi, who was in the YC cohort. And his vision for this company, I think there was just such an incredible energy when I met him that I thought, I need to see what he's going to do. And honestly, you go to Lagos and you'll see billboards and all the riders are Chaodec, but they are solving a very big problem, and one where people probably underestimated, who's going to pay for convenience of delivering food? A lot of people, they are doing double digits in revenue and really, really impressive company culture. Very much, I think one thing that really stood out for me is they really put their riders first, which is very opposite to what we see in a lot of, Europe, where it's, they're not paid well. They're paid really well. They're looked after. They have the opportunity to progress within the company. And that really stood out to me. He really looked after every single member of the team. And I think that's why they've done so well.
I'm just really curious also to get your point of view on the difference of founder mindsets between the UK, which has, a different ecosystem, and EIS, SEIS, all those tax incentives to just bring on money more easily from angel investors. I don't know if it's the same in the continents.
Not at all. Not at all. It's really hard. I mean, there are many founders who you'll here, it will take them well over a year to raise their first round. So very early on, they have to think about like just being not only profitable, but generating revenue, which I think is it's a luxury. They don't have the opportunity to just wait for round to round to fund them and to carry on building. They need to think about how they're going to make money. They need to show traction way quicker. And I think, because the pool of local capital is so much smaller, they need, this is why I really think Lavarie was important, and joining this army of other investors looking at the space, because, I see us as a bridge for capital, between Africa and the UK, Europe, and the US.
Yes.
Which I think is really critical. We need to think about how we get people more excited about the continent. There's so many green shoots. Population-wise, I just think there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of things that have not been disrupted.
Totally. And when you think of just practical tips you could share with founders who are listening right now, who are in Nigeria and South Africa, would you recommend that they, go to the US or go to the UK just to see how the ecosystem works? Do you recommend they stay local and just build revenue first? What would be your advice there?
I think many people haven't really tapped into the UK capital markets. I reckon that they should, rather everyone's registering in Delaware, I think they should be registering here and tap into the EIS and SEIS cap. That is something that has not been talked about enough. I think because of the YC trend, a lot of them just went straight to the US.
So interesting.
And actually, I think that the UK and Europe has a massive pool of capital as well.
I love that. I think that's really actionable. So if you are listening right now, go and build a company in the UK. I want to switch over to rapid fire rounds. So no overthinking, just answer as quickly as you can. What's the buzzword that you keep hearing in pitch decks right now?
AI.
What is the one area that you think is most underestimated right now?
Oh my goodness, just talking about revenue. I think that is, people forget that is actually, just go back to basics. Tell us how you're going to make money.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good one. Is there a book that has massively inspired you and that maybe has nothing to do with, it doesn't have to be a business book, but that has changed the way you look at things?
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. Absolutely. Mindset. That was the book that changed, how I thought about failure, because I just think it's about how you reframe all these situations. I think everything's a learning opportunity. So when things don't work, I'm like, okay, what can I learn from this?
It's so funny that you mentioned that. So it's a book from Dweck.
I love that.
It has changed my life as well, actually. And I think it's going back to your point when you said you were shy because, you didn't feel like there was a space for you. But actually, the way you look at the same events can really differ and allow you to give yourself that permission that sometimes we're all waiting for it to come from somewhere else. But yeah, well done. And the last question I've got for you is, what is your VC toxic trait? We all have one.
Oh my goodness. The number of podcasts I listen to.
So what's your favorite podcast? Doesn't have to be VC.
Oh, okay. If it doesn't have to be VC, I actually love How to Fail.
From Elizabeth
Day. I think, again, back to that thing of reframing. I think it's really important that, you don't have to see it as a failure. Just think of things as a learning opportunity. I think in life, I really feel like I've become an expert at reframing situations and just kind of moving forward. I think that's what we have to do. Just keep moving one step in front of the other. It gets better. It gets easier. And you start to see the light again.
I couldn't have imagined a better ending to this conversation. Thank you so much, June, for bringing both a lot of perspective and heart to this conversation.
Thank you for having me.